Hey, what's up, guys? My name's Kevin. This is Casie. We're with Restore Church. We're going to have Pastor Marc join us here in a little while, but we're in Portsmouth, Virginia, and we are going to be addressing improving your guest services. Casie runs our guest services team at Restore Church, so I'm just going to ask her some questions and allow her to give us some feedback of what her team does and the importance of a guest experience. So Casie, to start off with, a lot of times we don't know really where to start interacting with a guest, but where do you view the guest experience needs to begin?
Well, the guest services team includes several different areas, and one of those areas is the parking team. And so before any of our team members actually open a door for them to enter the building, our parking team is out there helping them find a parking spot.
Right.
Waving to them. If it's raining, they're going out with an umbrella. So we believe that guest services honestly starts as soon as they drive onto campus.
Yeah, absolutely. And very important to have people out there waving, and then also just cars driving by and seeing people giving of their time to welcome people is a big welcoming factor. So we have parking, and then you also have it broken down into several different segments of teams as you come in. How do you break it down, or how do you look at your team to see how many people you need in position to make sure that all guests are welcomed correctly?
Basically, I don't want a guest to walk a certain amount of distance without coming into contact with one of our team members. So we have door holders, and they basically stay at the doors, but I don't want a guest to feel abandoned once they come through the doors. So we kind of station people about, I guess, every 6 feet. We can social distance even outside of social distancing time. But I would say probably every 10 to 15 feet, there's probably a guest service team member that's kind of hanging out in the hallway. And so I kind of determine how many door holders I need and then station one person or so along the way so that they can show them where to go as they come in.
And then through that, I think I'm correct in this, but you have a person who's kind of like a floater, so that if there's an individual who comes in who has a lot of questions, the door greeter can go and find this person and be able to get back to their position.
Yeah, we try to work in couples at least, so that if one of our team members do have to leave their position, then they can let their other team member know, hey, I'm leaving, I'll be right back. And then they can kind of hand that guest off to someone who can help them advance and farther into the building.
Yeah, and what you said, hand off, is actually very important, making sure that they see that it's not just one individual greeting and welcoming, but there's a team, and that's what we want to make sure that we put off. We have a lot of signage at the church here, and I know that pastor's great with that kind of stuff, and also the team that helps them with that. We have signs that go outside, but in your opinion, for a guest, how important and what are some things that you need to look for signage?
I think signage is very important. I think of myself when I go somewhere new. If a store is expecting something, I want to know that, and I want it to be right in front of my face. For example, during this time of COVID, if the store wants me to wear a mask, then I want that sign to be very visible that it's required.
As you're pulling up.
And which doors to use and which ones not to use. If they want me to go a certain way down an aisle, I want that to be visible to me. I don't want to feel bad later that I did something wrong. And so as a guest is driving up onto campus, it's important for them to know, hey, here's the entrance.
Right.
Here's where we want you to go. Here's the restroom. Even if we still have to point to the sign, at least there's a sign there that says, hey, this is where you're going. And I know this is a question later on, but a lot of times guests that walk in with kids, they see the sign, so they know where to go, as opposed to asking somebody where to go.
And this day and age, we have a lot of individuals who they just don't want to have personal contact.
Right.
You come into a new place and you just kind of want to blend in. And so we want to do as much as we can on the forefront to negate some of those awkward times, handoffs, if you will. You talked about families coming in, but what is the process if a new family arrives, it's their first time, and they have children to check into what's your process there?
We have a lot of very outgoing people on our team, and they know to be looking for people that they don't necessarily recognize, and not ask them if they're new, but if they know where to go, or if they've been here a couple times in the past or whatever. And when our guest services team introduces themselves to them, then they can feel a little more at ease to kind of show them where to go and what their needs are for that moment.
Right, right. And then, so I'm going to step back into, we're a newer church, so we have a lot of new faces, a lot of people that we may not recognize. But whenever you're in a church that's been established for a while, and you know the majority of the faces continually, but then a new individual comes into the church, they are automatically known. This is a guest, and a lot of times we can attack that guest almost. But what are some ways that a church who's more established and has some familiar faces, and then they know a guest is coming in, maybe some verbiage, like how could we ask a question so that person feels comfortable and doesn't feel awkward walking in?
Yeah, I like the way you said they don't feel attacked, because I've heard of many established churches attacking.
Yeah, everybody
visitors.
comes.
Yeah. Recognize that you are an established church, and that there are going to be people that are going to come into your church as guests that do not need every member of your church coming up to them.
Right.
As you're forming your guest services team, make sure that your people know, all right, my job is to welcome them at the door and let them pass through.
Right.
My job is to say hello to them once they sit down, or to show them where their kids go. And you can kind of back off if you're an established church at that point. Asking questions like, are you new here, is probably not the best type of question. Maybe you could ask if they are a visitor in the area, or if they saw a sign that led them to the church.
How long have you been attending?
Right.
Maybe it just takes that edge
just
off.
pretend like you don't know that they're new.
Right.
That'd be a good thing too.
And that really does. That goes a long way in making a guest feel comfortable, because they don't feel like they're a standout.
Right.
And that's going to bring me into another part. You know, once a guest goes into service, you also have greeters in there.
I do.
You have ushers. Can you kind of take us through that a little bit of what takes place?
Yeah, so we have team members standing at the door of the auditorium. So before service, the doors are open. They can come in. They just say hi. If they're sitting by themselves, we might have a team member kind of roaming in the auditorium to say hi as they're sitting there, maybe engage in conversation. If they do introduce themselves and let them know that they're a first-time guest or a second-time guest, then they can ask them if they've connected at our guest services table.
So Casie, you have individuals who walk around in the sanctuary and engage in conversation. Once the service starts, is there anything special that maybe the pastor does to introduce them?
No. We do not recognize them publicly from stage. As far as having them stand up or taking a gift to them at their seat, we don't do that. But
now, explain to us why, because that is an important thing. There are a lot of churches who look at that and they're like, why wouldn't you? But why don't we?
We've already stated that people just kind of want to slide through and not be noticed, and by making them stand up, we are causing them to be noticed and be out of their comfort zone. And we don't want them to feel that way.
Right.
We want them to feel welcomed, but not out of their comfort zone.
They should be able to just be a part, whether they've been here one time or 3 years.
Right, right. So we don't recognize them individually, but there's always a statement, there's always a slide, there's always something said from stage that if you are a guest, then be sure to go to our Connect Center to be able to get your guest gift. There's always a slide telling a guest what they can do next. And then we also use our Connect cards. And on the back of the Connect card it says, I'm a first-time guest, second-time guest. And they can put that in the usher plates. And then our office team knows that there was a guest and they get a card. Or they can take this to the Connect Center to turn it in at the Connect Center. And then that's when they connect with our other team members and coaches to find out what their steps are.
And basically what we're doing here, it's not that we're trying to let someone come in and sneak in. We're just trying to allow them to be able to identify themselves as a guest. And as they come forward, we have incredible team members who talk with them, befriend them, find out what's going on in their lives, ways to pray for them. And it gives them the opportunity to identify themselves as a guest. And then this is the guest
gift.
Guest gift, yeah, that's what we have.
So they just basically present themselves to the Connect Center and say that they're a first-time guest and they would like their gift. And I have a couple of coaches, and one of my coaches stands at the Connect Center with an iPad. And so as she recognizes a first-time guest, she will give them the guest gift and then kind of go through some of the things that we put in it, as well as take them to the Restore Church website and show them how to navigate the website so they can figure out their next step that way too.
Yeah, and that's very important because like we said, we live in a society where people don't want to be bombarded. They don't want to leave with a stack of papers that they're going to read through. Everything is digital, everything's on the phone, and so the more we can push them to the website, and honestly, guest services can even start on the website.
Yeah.
People checking out there. But then you also talked about the Connect card, first time, second time, third time. Could you take us through these? I think they're in order of what we do.
So once they fill out the Connect card and put it in the offering plate, the Connect cards go to our office ladies, and our office ladies see whether it's the first time, second time, third time, and we send them a little postcard telling them, you know, their next opportunity they can serve. If they're a first-time guest, we donate meals to the food bank, and so it basically just says, hey, because you were here, we donated meals to the food bank. The second time, you know, we're glad you're back. You know, you can connect with a group, and on the back of the postcard, it's how you can contact and connect with a group. And then the third one is just they've been 3 times, they've heard it over and over again, but what is your next step? And it kind of pushes them to get involved in the church and in community. And it's just a reminder, like, hey, we know you've been here 3 times.
Yeah.
And we appreciate it.
Right. Yeah. We always want to make sure, and then like she said, we reiterate the same thing over and over again, and we're going to bring Pastor in just a little while to share what he says from stage. But right now, I want to kind of go into a team because we have a lot of churches who maybe you're established and the guest services team just kind of started with who's friendly, and so you have 2 or 3 people that show up on a Sunday and they stand at a door and they greet, they do great. But how can we organize that? So let's just go through that briefly.
Okay.
How do individuals become a part of the guest services team at Restore?
We do have steps, and normally the first step is for them to go to Life Track. So there have been times where people come up and say, look, I would love to hold a door for you. And that's where all of our team members are kind of trained to say, have you attended Life Track? And Life Track is just, we offer it on a monthly basis, but it's just 3-4 weeks basically where they learn about what our church is.
Right.
And then they're kind of filtered onto a team. And so basically they go through Life Track first and then kind of decide which team they want to be on.
Right. And Pastor has created our Life Track to fit our motto, if you will, believe, connect, and serve. And so week 1, when they go into Life Track, they talk about believe, and we talk about the importance of having a relationship with Christ. And our room monitors, if you will, they talk through with them at the end. Hey, if you haven't started a relationship with Christ, there's no better time than now. But if you have any questions, you can reach out to us at this link, this website. Week 2, we talk about connecting and the importance of being a part of a small group. That's what we push everybody to. And so when they come back on week 2, we talk about how important it is for us to grow in Christ together. And then week 3 is serve, and we talk about, Pastor shares about God has given everybody a gift. Some people have a gift of being up in front of people. Some people have a gift of music. Some people have a gift of being friendly as people walk in. Maybe it's with kids, but we try to find that gift. We even give a spiritual gift test so that we can see where they may fit. But we talk about how important it is to use those gifts to serve not only in the church, but in our community and serving others even at work. And then week 4 would be the week that you would come in and you would introduce yourself to anybody wanting to join your team and take them through some steps. How do you relay to them, like whenever you start meeting with them, what their expectations are?
Well, honestly, I tell them up front what their expectations are. We have a guidebook that
Right.
Anyone can see on our website.
And just so you know, we have restore.church/resources. We're putting all this information there, and you can go there and download this information, change it to whatever you want. But yeah, we have a guidebook for every team. So
Yeah.
go ahead.
And so in that guidebook, the front of it goes over everything that LifeTrack went over. And so you just kind of skip over that, and then I say, okay, these are the different areas for guest services. Make sure they know that. And then from the 4th Sunday, I make sure to get their phone number, their email address, and I immediately put them into what we use, which is Planning Center.
Right.
And once they're in Planning Center, they can see the schedule, they can see all the emails that go out to the team, and their first schedule for the next month is to shadow. We have 2 coaches during each service, so whichever service they choose, we call them the outside and the inside. We have an outside coach, which is everything from the doors in the hallway,
Right.
and so they shadow them, and we have an inside coach, which is the auditorium, and they make sure they get their phone numbers, their email address, and they know how to navigate our website and where to look for information. And after that first month, then that team member is scheduled on a rotating basis to serve.
Yeah. And you mentioned Planning Center, and I want to hit on that because there's a lot of churches. There is a cost to Planning Center.
There is.
And we finally got to the point where we had to do something more than email.
Right.
However, I would recommend just going from helping to get these teams started and established and then seeing leaders come up and take things over. Don't start a group text with your entire team because people will hide. They're not going to respond. They're not going to be a part of it. Don't start a group text. If at the very minimum, and I think you would agree, start an email group where emails go out to individuals, not everybody, blind carbon copy,
Right.
so that they can respond to you. And if somebody doesn't, then you can respond to them personally. But create that list, create a way that you're interacting more on a personal level, and that's what Planning Center does for us. It just makes it easier for our leaders and our teams. So you can check into that if you want to, Planning Center. But we'll have that resource at restore.church/resources. Yeah, that's it. Is there anything else you want to share about that before we move on?
No, Planning Center just gave us the opportunity to put all of our team members into one location.
Right.
Yes, there was a bit of a turnover in, we did the whole texting thing individually to getting them to then look at their emails.
Right.
It would be much better to look to the future as opposed to doing the right and now. What's best for the future, and we had to decide, and Planning Center was kind of the big picture that we needed for our future.
Right.
And so always look to the future.
Yes. You got to be looking forward all the time, and our pastor does an incredible job of looking at what needs to come next. Our team leaders do an incredible job at looking at what needs to come next. But then I'm gonna put this in as a personal thing, but you are pastor's wife, and we at Restore, pastor makes it very clear, we try to protect our wives because I've been to churches where wives are just kind of expected to step in, and you can share with us, but guest services is the team that you help coordinate, you lead. But you're not in nursery, you're not in kids, you're not running all of these programs, you're running guest services.
Yes.
And my wife is involved with worship, and that's what she does. And so pastors, I'm gonna say to you, there are people in your church, whether you have a small number or a large number, who want to be a part of this and are waiting to be asked. And a lot of times.
And I very quickly realized I couldn't run guest services by myself. I could not queue 15 people in 15 different places. I had to ask for help. And so I got my team together and I said, I need help. I need at least 4 or 5 people who I can call coaches, that if there's a problem, they can help take care of it. And I was going from running in and out of both services to finally being able to sit down.
To sit and
during at least
enjoy a
one
service, right? Yeah. And I'll hit on that while we're on it. You know, we do 2 services, and we really push. We want you to attend a service, and we want you to serve at a service. Do we have 100% participation? No, not at all. We can't mandate, but we can give the expectation, and we can practice it ourselves. And so we make sure that we attend a service, and then we serve in a service. This is good. So from here, how do guests learn about their next steps? We know 2 things that we always push, and you can say it without having to be coached or anything.
We always push Life Track, and we always push small groups.
Right.
And anyone that stands at that Connect Center that has anything to say to a guest, they're pushing Life Track and small groups as well.
Yep. And so we're going to bring Pastor in just a minute, but let's talk about COVID real quick as we close out, because look, COVID has changed everything we're doing.
We've had one get together face to face since March.
Yeah, and
So
the
we're
last
learning
service we
too.
have, we promoted as No Touch Sunday, and people came in, the Air 5s and all this, and we are being very cautious as a church about going back now. We're doing outdoor service, and we have another one scheduled for July the 20th. Probably shouldn't share that. We'll have to cut that out. You're gonna need another little edit here. We're doing outdoor service for our get-togethers right now, but COVID's given a little bit different change. But Casie, share with us, because I know you've stayed with your guest services team and you've even used Zoom, but what are some things that we're doing differently as a church?
Well, our team has kept up kind of meeting before church online. Every so often we do a little huddle, and on Zoom we talk for about 15 minutes, pray, and then it's time for service. As far as in person, we're learning. We actually did have guests come on property during the first service that we offered as in person. And I wouldn't say that we were completely prepared, but we did have about 4 people stationed along the sidewalk, plus our parking team, to wave people in and point people the way to go and answer any questions.
If you could change something, what would be something that you would immediately say, we needed to do this?
I think we needed to create a spot for if there was a guest, which there will be, for them to go to get their guest gift. We shouldn't expect them not to receive what they can.
Right.
And so maybe a tent or something in the future, so that there's somebody stationed at that tent that can do what we've talked about. Talk about Life Track, talk about navigating the website,
right.
Talk about a small group, because our small groups are still meeting.
Yep.
Either in a very small group setting or adding on to Zoom.
Yeah.
So future-wise, we had the parking team, we had a few greeters, but we probably need a location to actually touch non-touch.
Yeah, right.
Our guest.
And this is something that I think our team leaders do an incredible job at it. Our pastor does a great job at this, but we are constantly trying to find ways to make teams flow better and to make guest experiences better. But here's what can happen. You can get into a rut, and this is a prime example where we have guests appearing and we say, should have had something. And then the next time we don't implement something, and as you go further and further into it, it becomes easier and easier to just
forget about it.
Yeah.
Because it's easier on you.
Right. And so Casie does an incredible job of looking from a guest experience of like, what would she want walking into a service, and just looking at things. And so adding this tent is just another step. And if we don't do it next time, that's on us. And so as you see the changes, make the changes. And you brought up a good point that I want to come back to real quick. We were talking about communicating via email, but there's also another way that you communicate with your teams when we're in person, and you mentioned it on Zoom. But tell us the importance of the huddles and what they are.
Yeah, about 30 minutes before service, we have about 15-minute get-together, a huddle of our teams. and we do church-wide announcements or team announcements. We make sure we know what we're doing for the day, where everybody's going to be, and we pray together. Praise and prayer. And it's amazing. People who don't really connect throughout the week, they're not in the same small group, they don't sit on the same side of the auditorium. Right. They get so excited when other people have a praise item to share. And then if they're serving again on another Sunday, they're asking them, well, what about that prayer request you had?
Yeah,
How's
awesome.
it going? And so it's a way for our team not only to announce things to
Right.
keep our team members knowing what's going on, but it's a way for them to connect. Yep. So if any changes need to be made that day, like last minute communion, right. A different routine for ushers, it gets communicated during that 15 minutes before they serve.
I mean, let's face it, we're in ministry and this is life, but a lot of times communication gets dropped, and when that happens, we got to have ways. But you talked about your huddle, but we have huddles all over the building. Mm-hmm. Our toddler team is huddling, our worship team is huddling, our kids team's huddling, our student, and they're all sharing. And the reason that we did this was we used to come together, everybody all together, and we'd have 50 people out here standing around.
And thankfully, we're too big for that now.
Exactly. So now we're moving on. Okay. So I think that gets us to the point where we need to know what our next steps are, and so we're going to bring Pastor Marc in and let him share a little bit about what he does from stage. So we're going to introduce Pastor Marc to you. All right, so Pastor Marc here, and he, like I've said before, he does an incredible job of helping with vision and making sure that we keep things out in the forefront. But before we get to that, I want to talk about teams. We talked about guest services team, but across the board, we have a large team of volunteers that serve weekly. And so what are ways that we thank them and show them appreciation?
So Casie's one of our team leaders. She's talked with you about guest services. We have about 8 other team leaders, and we regularly, Kevin and I are the pastors here. And so our team leaders have more communication with the teams than we do. And so we try our best to pastor our team leaders and our small group leaders more than anybody else. I spend a lot of my time trying to pastor our leaders who are over ministries and small group leaders, and Pastor Kevin especially deals with team leaders, and we pastor them well. They're the people who have our cell phone numbers, they have our email, they're the people who have real close access to us.
Right. If something happens, we're gonna help them.
That's right. That's right. Not to say we don't know the people in our church, but as our church grows, we focus and invest in the core of our church, who are leaders, who are small group leaders, who are team leaders. But we also honor all volunteers. Anybody who gives an hour of their Sunday to serve in kids ministry or on guest services, really more than that, because they're getting here 30 minutes before church, for their huddle. We're going to honor them in a couple of different ways. We honor them with team nights where we spoil them. Non-COVID, we would be having a big meal. We're having team night in a week here.
Right.
And on a regular team night, we'd have a meal, we'd have games, prizes, honor and recognize some leaders. Because of COVID, we're doing snacks this year, not as much. We're spreading out outside.
Outdoors, probably some water balloons for kids to throw at us.
Right, just as far away as we can from each other, but still honoring them. But then the main thing is we honor our leaders and our volunteers regularly. So at the end of a service, we might mention somebody, put their picture up, or if they're in that service, have them come up on stage, thank them for how they lead. And what we're doing is we're honoring them so that we can replicate it. So whatever you celebrate gets replicated. Baptism's a big deal. I believe baptism should be something that people clap, get excited, hoot and holler, because when you celebrate something, people say, oh, that must be good. And so we should celebrate baptism. We should celebrate decisions for Jesus. We should also celebrate the in and out everyday people who've been saved for 35 years and still get here at 8:30 every Sunday. Yeah. They need to be celebrated. They need to be honored. And so we do that regularly on our Facebook, our social media, but also in person too. And so we do our best to honor our volunteers because they're not paid. They're giving themselves of themselves freely. So we do our best to honor them, not just with words. We give them gifts, gift cards, little things that we know they love. We find out what their favorite snacks are. We do these things on a regular basis. And it's not like random, hey, I'm going to honor this person. Kevin has leaders he's responsible for. I have leaders that I'm responsible for. And then they have teams of people that they're responsible for. And as Casie said, we try to break that down into coaches so that we all have a core of 3 to 4, sometimes 6 or 7 or 8 if you're a full-time staff member, people that you care for and love deeply and know well. So you can really honor them when you do that.
And he's talking about the leaders giving to their teams, but we understand budget too. Like,
Yeah.
we don't give them thousands of dollars.
That's right, yeah.
And they become they're very good at taking the dollar and stretching it. And it's little things, it's small things, just a small
Thoughtful
thank
things don't have to be expensive.
Right.
When
And
you
so
when you know somebody, yeah.
you. That's a huge deal. Make sure that you're saying thank you to those who are serving alongside of you and with you. But Pastor, let's get into the final thing that we want to talk about, and that is, what is your role with a guest coming into the service?
So I believe the pastor has a responsibility for the guests in the service. And a long time ago, Tim Keller said you need to preach as if the atheist, the non-believer, the doubter, the wanderer, the person spiritually far from God is in the service. You need to preach as if they're there. And I preach as if guests are there. And we have guests every Sunday. We're in a very transient area. We're always going to have guests. But as a pastor, I do some very specific things to make sure that our guests have an experience. Not just they feel good. That's not what I'm talking about. I want somebody to leave with real crystal clarity about who we are as a church, about what Jesus has done for them. And my job, everything else so far has communicated. The signage has communicated where the restrooms are, where they need to drop their kids off. The guest services team has communicated that you're loved and valued. We care about you. We want you here. It is my job to communicate the gospel, obviously, number one, but also to communicate, once you get saved, what to do. And this is where a lot of us as pastors drop the ball. We say, hey, come to church, hear a great message. And then we say, hey, guest, we're really glad you're here. Grab a gift on your way out. See you later. And they don't really know what to do next. So whenever there's a service, I'm going to preach the gospel, I'm going to preach the text, but I'm always going to work two things into my message or my closing, or some way I'm going to mention two things you've already heard about over and over. Life Track and small group, because nobody is a part of our church who doesn't go through Life Track. Nobody's involved in the community of our church if they're not regularly involved in a small group. There is no, hey, I want one-on-one access with the pastor. There is no, hey, I want to be a member who only attends occasionally. No, like, if you are a part of this church, you go through Life Track, you find a serve team and a small group. Because you're committed to God's word and studying it, and you're committed to serving others. Right. I'm not spiritually knowledgeable because I go to small group and know all this knowledge. I'm also serving. It's not one or the other. So as a pastor, I always end the service pointing everybody's attention to the Connect card. It doesn't matter what Sunday it is. It could be Memorial Day weekend. It could be Christmas. It could be Easter. We're going to pull out our Connect cards, and I'm going to give everybody a moment to fill these out. And if you're a guest, I'm going to make them a guarantee. I'm going to say, listen, if it's your first time here, when you fill this card out and you drop it in the offering plate, we're not going to bother you. We're not going to show up at your house unannounced. We're not going to call you all hours of the night. We're not going to do that. But what we are going to do is make a donation in your name to a local food bank, and we're going to follow up with you, probably in an email and a text message this week. And so I let them know, no one's coming to your house unannounced. You don't have to clean up, all right? We're gonna give you your space, your privacy, but we are expecting you to fill this out. And on the card, there are next steps. Am I a first-time guest, second-time guest, third-time guest? Right. Casie walked you through those. Go ahead.
Yeah. And no, I was just going to say, with this Connect card, at the same time, he always says, I want everybody to pull out their Connect card, because the people who are coming on a regular basis, we pull ours out because there's a prayer request slot.
That's
now,
right.
What does that do? That says to the guest next to me, who may be their first time, I might be a guest, but I'm filling this card out, or I may be a regular.
Everybody is.
And so everybody is
Right.
participating in this.
I'm not
and
singled
so
out.
Nobody stands out when they reach to pull a Connect card out.
So our Connect card also is how I close the service, because it talks about decisions. So once they put their information, there's a thing at the bottom that says, today I did one of 5 things. I accepted Christ. If they did that, we want to know about it. I've decided I'm ready to be baptized, or I'm ready to join a group, or attend Life Track. 4 things. So those are our 4 big steps. Like, obviously everybody who attends your church, their number 1 step is to have a relationship with Jesus. Yes, yes, yes. But what we found is that most of the time, they're not going to do it their first Sunday. Like, a lot of times somebody comes to our church for 8 to 12 weeks before they make any kind of move spiritually as it relates to a relationship with Jesus. And so sometimes they'll go through Life Track, finish Life Track, and it's clear at the end of Life Track, Kevin's got this whole big deal he goes through with them. And before you can join a team, it's like, hey, when did you get saved? Oh, you're not saved yet. Awesome. Your next step is getting saved. And whenever you're ready, we could do it right now. You need to do that. They can join a small group, but like, they're not a part of our church if they're not a believer. And so if they've been saved but not baptized, that's all figured out in Life Track, and it lays out clearly for a person, right, what my next step is in relationship to this church, in relationship to the Lord. Because most people attending your church don't want to just hear a good message, don't want to just see a good kids program. Personally, they want to know what's my next step. Do I need to go to church more? And if all we're preaching is, hey, just keep coming to church, people can go hear good messages online. Like, they want to know they're invested somewhere where they're making a difference. And so my job for the guest is to make clear to them, here's who we are, this is what we want for you, we want you to have a relationship with Jesus, and when you're ready, we believe that everybody who's a Christian should have a relationship with the local church. And how you get involved here is Life Track. And how you develop community here is you join a small group. And so as a pastor, the hardest part of my week is not the sermon prep. It's figuring out how to work small groups and Life Track into my message or my closing, because I don't want somebody coming to church that weekend and not leaving with clear answers. If I want to be involved in this church, this is what happens next.
How do I grow?
Yeah.
What do I do to grow?
What does it look like for me to grow? And by the way, that's the whole deal here. I'm not just trying to fill our serve teams. Like, we have people on our serve teams. I tell them all the time, I don't want you to just fill a role on a serve team. If you're going to grow as a believer, you need to be actively serving. I grew most when I was serving in second grade boys Sunday school at a church. I taught second grade boys every week. There was about 20 of them. And so I tell them over and over, if you want to grow, you need to begin serving. And so if you haven't begun serving at our church, that's your next step. And if you haven't gone through Life Track, you need to go through Life Track. These are all just systems to point them to decisions they have to make. All right? And I want to be clear that your first decision is following Jesus. You get baptized, and then you start going to church and growing, and you grow most when you're surrounded by other believers, not in church, but in a small group, in somebody's house, in a small room at church. Some of our groups do meet at church, but that's where we grow most, when we're serving and going to Bible study together.
So let me just kind of close this out in this way. There's some representation here who probably have a smaller church, and you're listening to this and you're like, this is overwhelming, it's too much. Let me give you two things to work towards.
Yeah, and I want to say something about that too.
Okay. Pastor, first off, let me encourage you, like our pastor has said, you need to have a closing that is almost repetitive weekly, because that way your people know what the expectations are, and it's repetitive. I've heard that once you're sick of saying it, people are hearing it for the first time.
Yeah.
And so I know what pastor's going to be saying, and I can almost repeat it. And that way, if something happens to him, I can step in and I can share what needs to be said. So pastor, you need to work on that. And then pastor, also, you might say, I'm just one man and I can't. You need to find one individual on your team who can, in your church, who is great at guest services, but is also great at delegating. Someone who is willing to step back and say, you have a gift, and let's start putting some people in place. And let's set a goal. By this time next month, we want to have 2 people on our guest services team. I don't know what it is, but pastor, if you don't take the lead and start sharing the vision, this will get lost in translation, and as guests come in, they will leave, and they won't know what the next step is.
Yeah, and I want to say this to pastors. You hear this and you're like, oh, we don't have that team. How are we going to do this? We started this with Kevin and I doing most of this, okay? Like, when our church started, started with 9 adults in my living room, but then when we started meeting in churches and fellowship halls and here and there, like, I was on the guest services team for a while. I was pulled off because it's not healthy for you to be on the welcome team. Right. It's just not. There are people who want to sit and talk to the pastor afterward. Look, I try to make sure that on Sundays, my time is spent with our leaders and our regular, not just attenders, but actively engaged serve team members. Right. Those are the people who are giving everything to this church. Right. And they should be the ones getting our time. I'm going to say hello to guests. Occasionally I still do, but that gets me into more trouble than you. So make sure you're not on that team, but also, this is not too much. You say, we can never do this follow-up. Most of this follow-up is automated now. Like, I could put the cards in if I had to. I don't do it anymore, but there was a season where Kevin and I were responsible for putting in the cards while somebody else counted the offering. You can do this now and set up a system that is healthy and helps follow up with people, and they don't just go to church and are forgotten about and never followed up with. Yep. You need to follow up with them, and if it means you doing the office side of it, fine. Err on that side, not the in-person side.
Right.
All right.
Yeah, and protect your wives.
Yep.
I'm going to say that. I'll say that till I'm dead. Protect your wives. Your wives don't need to see a lot of things. They don't need to be running everything. Yeah. Protect your wives. But look, all this information is on restore.church/resources. We have taken a lot of this information from other resources, and we give credit there. There's all kinds of information on the website, but please go there, download it, use it. Make it your own, and if you have any questions, you can reach out to us on Facebook, however you need to, and we will look forward to hearing from you.
Thanks, guys. Hope this helps, and we hope that you have not just guests at church. We hope that guests turn into return attenders. We hope that they come long enough to not just hear the gospel, but to respond to the gospel. We hope that you get used to seeing guests go from guests to attenders to converts to growing disciples who are bringing friends to church because of how they were welcomed and treated and loved as they responded to Jesus and the life-changing good news of the gospel.
That's exactly right. Thank you. Thank you, guys.